Dorothy, and I live here in the village, and this is my little dog Gracie. You might see me walking around sometimes with her, and I'm going to read a story called The Warm Fuzzies and the Cold Pricklies. Okay, so to begin, once upon a time, a long time ago, there lived two very happy people called Tim and Maggie with their two children, John and Lucy. To understand how happy they were, you have to understand how things were back in those days. You see, back then, everyone was given at birth a small, fuzzy bag. Anytime a person reached into this bag, he was able to pull out a warm fuzzy. Warm fuzzies were very much in demand because whenever somebody was given a warm fuzzy, it made them feel warm and fuzzy all over. People who didn't get warm fuzzies regularly were in danger of developing a sickness in their back, and it could cause them to shrivel up and die. In those days, it was very easy to get warm fuzzies. Anytime somebody felt like it, he might walk up to you and say, "I'd like a warm fuzzy." And you would reach into your bag and pull out a warm fuzzy the size of a little girl's hand. As soon as the fuzzy saw the light of day, it would smile and blossom into a large, shaggy, warm fuzzy. You then would lay it on the person's shoulder or their head or their lap, and it would snuggle up and melt right against their skin and make them feel good all over. People were always asking each other for warm fuzzies, and since they were always given freely, getting enough of them was never a problem. There were always plenty to go around, and as a consequence, everyone was happy and felt warm and fuzzy most of the time. One day, a bad witch became angry because everyone was so happy and no one was buying potions and salves that she made to sell to people who felt bad. The witch was very clever and came up with a very wicked plan. One morning, the witch crept up to Tim while he was watching his wife play with their daughter, and the witch whispered in his ear, "See here, Tim, look at all the fuzzies that Maggie is giving to Lucy. You know, if she keeps it up, eventually she's going to run out and there won't be any left for you." Tim was astonished. He turned to the witch and said, "Do you mean to tell me that there isn't a warm fuzzy in our bag every time we reach in?" And the witch said, "No, absolutely not. And once you run out, that's it. You don't have any more." With this, the witch flew away, laughing and cackling. Tim took this to heart and began to notice every time Maggie gave up a warm fuzzy to somebody else. Eventually, he got very worried and upset because he liked Maggie's warm fuzzies very much and did not want to give them up. He certainly did not think it was right for Maggie to be spending all of his time giving her warm fuzzies to the children and other people. He began to complain every time he saw Maggie giving a warm fuzzy to somebody else. And because Maggie liked him very much, she stopped giving warm fuzzies to other people as often and reserved them for him. The children watched this and soon began to get the idea that it was wrong to give up warm fuzzies anytime you were asked or felt like it. They too became very careful. They would watch their parents closely, and whenever they felt that one of their parents was giving too many warm fuzzies to others, they also began to object. They began to feel worried whenever they gave away too many warm fuzzies. Even though they found a warm fuzzy every time they reached into their bag, they reached in less and less and became more stingy. Soon people began to notice the lack of warm fuzzies, and they began to feel less warm and less fuzzy. They began to shrivel up and even though they didn't seem to help much. Well, the situation was getting very serious indeed. The bad witch really didn't want people to die because dead people couldn't buy any of her salves and potions, so she came up with a new plan. Everyone was given a bag that was very similar to the fuzzy bag, except that this one was cold while the fuzzy bag was warm. Inside the witch's bag were cold pricklies. These cold pricklies did not make people feel warm and fuzzy, but made them feel cold and prickly instead. But they did prevent people's bags from shriveling up, so from then on, every time somebody said, "I want a warm fuzzy," people who were worried about being out of their supply would say, "I can't give you a warm fuzzy, but would you like a cold prickly?" Sometimes two people would walk up to each other thinking they could get a warm fuzzy, but one or the other would change their mind and wound up giving the other person a cold prickly. So while very few people were dying, a lot of people were still unhappy and feeling very cold and prickly. The situation got very complicated. Warm fuzzies, which used to be thought of as free as air, became extremely valuable. This caused people to do all sorts of things to obtain them. Before the witch had appeared, people used to gather in groups of 3 or 4 or even 5, never caring too much who was giving warm fuzzies to who. After the coming of the witch, they began to pair off to reserve all their warm fuzzies for each other exclusively. People who forgot themselves and gave a fuzzy to someone else would feel guilty because they knew that their partner would probably resent the loss. People who could not find a generous partner had to buy their fuzzies, and they worked long hours in order to earn the money. Another thing which happened was that some people could take cold pricklies, which were limitless and freely available, coat them white and fluffy, and pass them off as warm fuzzies. These fake warm fuzzies were really plastic fuzzies, and they caused additional difficulties. For instance, two people would get together and freely exchange plastic fuzzies, which should have made them feel good, but instead they came away feeling bad. Since they thought they had been exchanging warm fuzzies, people grew very confused about this, never realizing that their cold, prickly feelings were really the result of the fact that they had been given a lot of plastic fuzzies. So the situation was very, very dismal, and it all started because of the coming of the witch, who made people believe that someday, when the least expected, they might reach into their warm fuzzy bag and find no more. Now, not long ago, a lovely, strong woman with big hips and a happy smile came to this unhappy land. She seemed not to have heard about the witch and was not worried about running out of warm fuzzies. She gave them out freely, even when not asked. People called her the hip woman, and some disapproved of her because she was giving the children the idea that they should not worry about running out of warm fuzzies. The children liked her very much because they felt good around her. They too began to give out warm fuzzies whenever they felt like it. The grown-ups became concerned and decided to pass a law to protect the children from using up their supplies of warm fuzzies. The law made it a criminal offense to give out warm fuzzies in a reckless manner without a license. Many children, however, seemed not to know or care, and in spite of the law, they continued to give each other warm fuzzies whenever they felt like it, and always when asked. Because there were so many children, almost as many as grown-ups, began to look as if the children would have their way. As of now, it's hard to say what will happen. Will the forces of law and order stop the children? Are the grown-ups going to join with the hood woman and the children in taking a chance that there will always be warm fuzzies as needed? Will Tim and Maggie, recalling the days when they were so happy, when warm fuzzies were unlimited, begin to give away warm fuzzies freely again? Struggle spread all over the land and is probably going on where you live. If you want to, and I hope you do, you can join by freely giving and asking for warm fuzzies and by being as loving and healthy as you can. Now, I hope you liked the story, and I hope you stop to think about what makes you feel warm and fuzzy, and which would you rather have, a warm and fuzzy feeling or a cold and prickly one? Okay, think about that. And when you go home, give your mom and dad a big hug, because that's one of the best ways to get warm fuzzies. Thank you.